Good morning all, and welcome to the Lettuce Crop and Agronomy webinar this morning. My name is Rebecca Stilton and I'm one of the product managers for Syngenta in crop protection. So this morning, just a couple of housekeeping bits and pieces. You may have seen at the top of your screen that we are recording this webinar, and this will be available on our YouTube channels after the meeting. We thoroughly encourage questions, and we would ask if you can put those to the presenters through the Q&A function you'll find within Zoom. If you can't see it at the bottom of your screen already, if you hover your mouse around the bottom half of your screen, you should get a black bar come up and you'll see this Q&A function. So if you type your questions in there, then I'll facilitate those to the presenters, either as we go through the presentations, or we may save them till the end. We'll see how it goes. Just to let you know, you'll receive a follow-up email tomorrow where you'll be able to claim basis and Neroso points if they're applicable to yourself. And there's also a link to a small survey that we'd ask if you could just fill those in. It's only half a dozen questions or so, which really helps us to shape these kind of events going forwards. So just a reminder of who we're going to hear from today. We're going to kick off with Olaf. Olaf is the global breeding lead in lettuce, and he's going to give us an update on the lettuce breeding priorities going forwards. We'll then hand over to Rosie. Rosie is a technical sales representative for Syngenta Veg Seeds, and she's going to give us an overview on the key leafy varieties and what new varieties are coming through. We'll then move into crop protection, where we'll hear from Michael Tait, who's our technical manager, and he'll give us a fungicide update. And we'll finish off hearing from Max Newbert, who's our insecticide specialist, so he'll give us an update in that area. So without further ado, we'll kick off the presentations, and I'll ask Olaf if he can share his presentation and we'll kick off.
Thank you, Rebecca. Good morning, everyone. In addition to the introduction that Rebecca made, I want to mention that I'm also a breeder for Iceberg lettuce for Northwest Europe, so besides the global breeding lead. Today I will talk about the priorities that we have within Syngenta for lettuce breeding programs. And in the presentation today, I will talk about our footprint, where we are located around the world. I will discuss a bit on hybrid breeding and then on the traits that we do address. And as last topic, some new technology tools that we are adopting within our breeding programs. So first of all, our footprint globally. We are present in 4 places around the world. For Northwest Europe, we are breeding in both Enkhuizen and France, and we are doing in the Netherlands Iceberg lettuce, butterhead, and in France Batavia and indoor crops. Then we have a site in Spain, in Torre Pacheco, where we are addressing quite some segments for romaine. In fact, all the types from little gems to minis to large romaines. We do multi-leaves, baby leaves, and also iceberg lettuce. And then we have a site in the US, where we are breeding romaine lettuces and iceberg. Between the different programs, we are sharing germplasm to improve the germplasm pools that we have, so that we can deliver improved varieties to our customers. Besides breeding, we of course also have technology support through pathology, market development by plant physiologists and cell biologists. In December last year, Syngenta did acquire a company in the US, which is Progeny Advanced Genetics. That company is highly specialized in lettuces, and especially in iceberg lettuce. They hold a good position on the coast. But what is really interesting of this company is that they are the first with hybrid lettuce. And we hope to introduce by the end of this year hybrid lettuce for the processing romaine market. So what is the advantage of hybrids? It's mainly in terms of yield and plant size. We think that we can have around 30% more yield per crop than from a normal romaine. So this is really exciting for us, and it will be the first hybrid that will be brought to the market for lettuce. Also, for hybrid lettuce, we are looking into mechanical harvest icebergs. So on the picture here at the bottom, you can see some of the shapes. They are different than the normal fresh market specs that we have. And also this one is addressed for the processing market. Towards the future, whether this will be accepted in fresh market, I think it really depends also on labor availability and the cost of labor, because as you all know, this is a big issue. So we are working in both hybrid lettuce and also we have some prototypes on mechanical harvest for iceberg. Now, when will this come to Europe? I think that will take another 3 to 4 years because we are first introducing the concept in the US with, as said, the processing romaine. But I think this is something definitely to look out for the near future. If I then move on to the traits that we are focusing on, in terms of biotic traits, like most of the companies, Bremia is one of the top traits to work on. It's an ongoing battle to find new resistance genes to bring them in and to keep up with the newest races that appear into the market. Similarly, for Nasonovia, and most of the commercial varieties, they do have resistance against biotype 0. But since 2007, there is also a biotype 1 available. And like many companies, we are also breeding for resistance to this new biotype. We expect that in a couple of years we will have something to bring to market. So those will be really exciting times. Then the other disease of importance, that is Visarium. 10 years ago, it was not really an important trait. Not many people were talking about it. But since then, especially around the Mediterranean, Japan, US, it has really become a hot topic. Predominantly, race 1 is present in all the countries in the world. And since the last few years, we have identified a race 4 that has also been quite devastating in Northwest Europe. But as far as my knowledge goes, this is only limited to indoor cropping. I don't expect that for Northwest Europe, Fusarium will become an issue for outdoor cropping because the temperatures are low. But in the event that it would happen, I think it would be good to know that we have a wide resistance against the race 4 widely present in our outdoor assortment. Also, Fusarium race 1, we have resistance available in our assortment. On this slide, I want to explain how we are working to incorporate new resistance genes from wild species. Here on the top right, you see 4 types. The sativa is the normal lettuce. Cereola is the ancestor of sativa, and cereola is a good source to find downy mildew resistances, and that is what we are doing. And then there are 2 other types, the Varosa and Saligna, and both of them, they are more distant from sativa, where cereola and sativa can be easily crossed. It is more difficult to have a Varosa or a Saligna cross with sativa. But if you cross any of those 3 with a sativa, you get a whole bunch of linkage drag. And linkage drag is in fact every trait that you don't want to have in your variety. And here on the left side, I've made there's a picture of what linkage drag can be, and that goes from early bolting to dwarfism, poor seed yield, tiburon, poor rooting systems, anything you can think of, and that is what you need to get rid of. Now, in the past, we did not have molecular markers available, and you really had to screen a large number of plants in the field to find a good phenotype, and that still holds the resistance, and that's really time consuming. Now, today it's still time consuming with markers, but here at the bottom, those is a DNA profile, and each row is an individual plant. What you see here, everything in orange with the character A is the DNA of sativa. Anything in green with a B is the DNA of a wild type, and anything in blue is half sativa, half wild type. Now what we are looking for is a trait of resistance. So here in the oval, all the B's in green, that is the trait of interest, that is the resistance. And what we want to happen is that all the other part around becomes orange. So when we make a cross, we have a couple of thousand seeds. We all take DNA from each of the individual plants and we run markers on those, and then we get a profile like this. Now this one has been sorted, but the most interesting plants from this graph would be those three. And the next step is to make a cross again with that material and then run marker test again. And by doing so, this piece will become smaller and smaller. But the closer we get to the gene, the less events we have occurring that it becomes orange. So that's why it takes time. So this is how we are introgressing resistance genes from wild species into normal lettuce varieties. If I go to this one, this slide, this is another example of how you can use markers effectively in breeding. Let's say in the past, without marker, we were able to follow 1, maximum 2 resistance genes through a disease test. But now with markers, we can follow many. And on this graph, you see the 9 chromosomes of lettuce. And each of the gray areas, those are resistance genes for Bremia. Now with markers, we can follow 5 or 6 of those genes, and that will allow us to make a gene stack of 5 or 6 resistance genes, and through that way to provide a more durable resistance than we had in the past. So this is the benefit of working with molecular markers in developing durable resistance. If I move on to abiotic traits, the traits here are the traits that we work on. Of course, plant vigor, very important because you need to have a decent head size to bring it to the market. And the same for bolting and tip burn. If those are not okay, you won't be able to sell your crop. Beside that, for us, harvest window is very important. If you can leave your crop 3 to 4 days longer in the field, it gives more flexibility to the grower. So that's something that we are definitely looking for in our breeding programs. Then wide adaptability. In an early stage of our breeding programs, and in this case for Northwest Europe Iceberg program, we are testing our materials in the UK, in the Netherlands, and in Germany throughout the different seasons. And by doing so, we want to identify those varieties that perform under all those circumstances because they will have the highest or the widest adaptability, which brings more security to the grower. The last point that we work on is shelf life, and I have to admit that this is a more difficult trait because there is a large genotype environment interaction, which in fact means that varieties are not performing the same under different weather circumstances. So that is what we are addressing, but as said, it's not the easiest trait to work with. If I move on to tools that we are, or technology that we are adopting within our breeding program. So in-house we have developed a environmental comparison tool, and that would allow us to make comparisons on climate, on soil data, and we have that available for around the world. On this slide, I have an example for Batavia lettuce. So Brazil is a very important market for Batavia. and around the area of Sao Paulo is a growing area. But it's very difficult to bring seeds into Brazil. That takes an enormous amount of time, so it's much easier to breed in a different country. And our breeding programs for Batavia are located in France. So our question was, are we able to breed for the winter market in Brazil? Are we able to breed for that in France? And according to the tool, the answer is yes, because the more purple, the more the climate is resembling. And we found on the border of Brittany and Normandy an area in the area of Rennes. We said, well, this is really comparing in summer France, we can breed for winter Brazil. And that is what we're verifying currently at the moment. The other way we can use this tool is by, if you have good performing varieties, we can look for similar climates and make a proposal in what other areas of the world this variety would grow, would have a high chance of success. So for us, this is really an extremely powerful tool that we have developed in-house. The last slide that I want to talk about, that is digital imaging. Like several of you also make the move to digital imaging, we also do. For us, it's really important to go from more qualitative to more quantitative data. So that's what we are working on in terms of the head, the way the bottom looks, the shape, but also the internal features. And beside that, we also work with drones. In this case, it's an example to make an estimation for uniformity. So everything where it's white, those are uniform. Everything in dark, they are smaller. So the 2-1 here, those are smaller on the picture. That is this piece of the image from the drone. So we have started working on this. This is work in progress, and we will definitely develop this further. And with that, I've come to the end of my presentation.
That's great. Thank you very much, Olaf. Just a reminder, people, if you want to ask questions of our panelists, please put those into the Q&A box. But to push on through the agenda, I'll ask Rosie if she can please share her presentation and deliver that for us. Brilliant. Thank you, Rosie.
Hi, everyone. So firstly, I'd just like to say what a fantastic presentation from Olaf, and I think it gives us some really good confidence about the breeding, what we have coming forward in the future in terms of our hybrid lettuce program, and also all the digital tools that we have to support the breeding. So it looks really exciting. So today, I'm just going to be sharing with you some of the key NPIs we have in our lettuce program. I'm going to be focusing on Iceberg, Speciality and Bellagio crops, as well as spinach and baby leaf. But we also have really nice varieties in romaine, gem and mini romaine. So if anyone needs more information on any of those crops as well, feel free to ask any questions. So to start off with Iceberg, I think in the last 4 or 5 years, we've really developed and expanded our range. So it's we've got some really good varieties that are currently on the market, which are Ice Wave and Ice Circle, and also Ice Jazz. And we've got some fantastic new varieties coming through, which are available commercially and for trialing as well. So if you haven't tried them, it's worth having a look at them. So Ice Wave, originally we introduced it as a summer variety, but we found in some areas it works for the whole season, and we've had some really good results from Ice Wave, particularly to do with the uniformity of the crops. And similarly, Ice Circle is more of a spring and autumn variety, but it's performed very well, particularly at the back end of the season. And again, it's a really nice variety for the retail size heads, as you can see there. So and then Ice Jazz is a variety which works spring and autumn, but I've found that it's particularly good in the autumn when I've found in fields where the conditions are quite ribby, Ice Jazz always seems to hold its shape, which is what you want in a variety. You really want that consistency of harvest. So yeah, looking very good there. And then Ice Pop is a variety that we've introduced for the summer period. It's quite slow growing, and the holding its shape is really nice. And then we've got two more, Ice Soul and Ice Rave, which we're looking at on a bigger scale this year. So moving on to speciality, I just thought I would show you these. The first variety has got a name now. It's called Gruger. It used to be the 1956, and it's basically what we are calling it is a burger leaf type concept. So it's a multi-headed lettuce. It doesn't form a heart, and if you cut out the core, all the leaves are similar round shapes, and the thickness of the leaf is really thick. So you could cut it out and then have it like one leaf on a burger, and it would maintain that crispiness. So that's something that is really exciting, and we're looking to introduce it this year. So if anyone wants to have a look at that, you're welcome to have some seeds. And then this year is our first introduction of our new mini berg called Green Spy, which is a really nice crispy shaped head. It's a small-ish size, slightly larger than a gem, and yeah, the results from this look quite promising. So, and following on from there, we've also got some newer numbers which we are trialing this year. So it looks good for Miniberg in the pipeline. And then moving on to our Bellagio type leaves. This Bellagio is the Syngenta name of calling our sort of multi-headed lettuces. And we've got Prodigio, which is commercial on the market, which is a full resistance red Apollo type. And it's really the direction that we've moved into for breeding for these types of heads is for high yielding and suitability for high density sowings. So yeah, this one is looking really good for that, especially on the high density sowings. And also we've got the 19-19-11, which is a new number, which is a very crispy leaf. We've had it in processability trials, and we found that it has gone through in the processing factories very well. And the size of it, it's quite a compact size head, but the weights of the head are really heavy. So it's a very good variety to have a look at. We've also got some more coming, but we won't have seeds until July. So the main two that we're looking at this year are the Prodigio and the 19-19-11. So moving on to baby leaf. the main things that we're looking for in baby leaves are innovative leaves and leaves that will work really well in a bag. So for example, the 1937 on the left here, we haven't got a name for it yet, but it's a really nice thick leaf with a frilly margin, which would look really presentable in a lettuce bag. And then if you want one that fills out the bag a bit more and gives volume to the mix, we've got this new variety called Rock Eater, which is an incised version of our baby leaf variety Crisp Eater 2. So, and I think the incised nature of the leaf gives it really good volume in the bag. So it's something, if you're growing Crisp Eater, it's definitely worth having a look at this alongside and looking at the comparison between the two. And then for the first year, we've got a new red oak. So for anyone interested in red oak, we have this 1947, which is really nice, dark, shiny red oak leaf. So it's the first time that we've had red oaks. So and moving on to spinach, the spinach program, we've had a fantastic breeder who's really pushed forward the spinach program towards the sort of Northwest Europe market. In the past, it was more focused on Spanish types, but now we've got some really good types for the UK. So we focused on, one is the Downy mildew and stem Phyllium resistance. 2 is the leaf shape. So we've been looking, instead of having a sort of pointed leaf shape, we've been looking for a really nice round leaf shape. And 3 is the savoidness of the leaf. So we really want a nice semi-savoid leaf type. And 4 is the leaf thickness. So starting off from the early season, you can see here I've got spring, summer and autumn. So starting with El Bravo at the start of the season, this is a really fast growing variety. It's got a slight Savoy, but the main advantage of this, along with the resistances, is that it grows in a really nice upright nature. And then following from the El Bravo is the El Lucio, which has got our strongest resistance package. It's a really nice leaf shape with a semi-slight Savoy as well to it. And then brand new for this year, we've had it in trials for a few years, is the El Furio, which is it's probably the thickest leaf we have, and the savoyness is really nice. It's for the spring and autumn. It's a reasonably slow growing variety, so it should go in late spring, early autumn, but avoiding the summer period. And then El Halo, which is a fantastic new summer variety, which has got excellent bolting tolerance. And you can see here the leaf shape and savoyness is really nice. So just to talk a bit about stem Phyllium leaf spot, this is something that you can see here. It causes spots on the leaves. We've tested samples and identified, in most cases, it is caused by stem Phyllium, and we've also identified that a number of our varieties are resistant to stem Phyllium. So this is really exciting. So of our new range, the El Bravo, El Lucio and El Furio have all got resistance to stem Phyllium. So if it is an issue, it might be worth having a look at these varieties. And then in terms of downy mildew resistance, you can see here that most of the varieties are missing 8, or they're intermediate on 8, but other than that they've got the full package of resistance. So I think in terms of crop security, I think these varieties will do really well going forward. And then just quickly to talk about events, we will be having, normally we have an open day in Spain. Obviously, because of travel restrictions this year, we can't do that. But the Spanish team are planning to hold some virtual events in week 7. So we will send out more details soon about those. We've also got our veg agronomy webinar for brassicas on the 25th of February, and there's also an onion one coming up if anyone's interested. So if you check the Syngenta website for the events, everything is listed on there. And this year our open days in Holland were in 2020, the open days in Holland were unfortunately cancelled, but we've set up this online platform, and the link is here. Just go to fieldsofInnovation.online, and it's a platform where you can have a look at all the different new varieties we have on offer. It's still open and available to see, and there's videos on different varieties. So if you haven't checked it out, it's worth having a look at that platform. So yes, thank you for listening. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to contact me afterwards or in the Q&A as well.
That's great. Thank you very much, Rosie. So now I think if we can hand over to Michael Tait, he's going to take us through a fungicide update in lettuce crops.
Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the meeting. I'm Michael Tait, Technical Manager looking after potato products and veg products in the UK. And I want to talk to you this morning about a new product that we've got coming through as a fungicide, which is highly active against Bremia, downy mildew in lettuce, and could be seen as a sort of an extra tool for helping to manage downy mildew in the crop going forward. Now I've got to start with, I've got a short video clip, and this explains to you a bit about how the product works and gives you a bit of background on it. It is a European video rather than just specifically for the UK, so it does include references to crops we don't have approved in the UK, but I think it's still useful because it gives you a fairly clear picture on how the material works and what it can potentially offer growers going forward. So when we've been through the short video, I'll come back to standard sort of PowerPoint and talk you through some trial data, just a little bit of trial data from Stockbridge Technology Centre, which again illustrates the activity of Arondis Plus in the lettuce crop. Now, I have to admit, this is the first time I've tried doing a video through Zoom, so fingers crossed that this works okay. I'm sure you will see the pictures okay, and some of it is a little bit jumpy at the start, because obviously in order to shorten it a little bit, we've had to take a few sections out. So bear with me on that. The only bit I'm a little bit uncertain about is whether you'll get the sound properly, because when I brought this video up, brought this presentation up, I didn't see a button I normally click on to ensure the sound plays through the computer. But bear with me and let's sort of see how this works. Okay then, well, I think the sort of the key points to take from that short video clip are that it's new chemistry, it's highly active material, and because it is so very active, we are always going to be selling it in combination with another product. And you'll see that it's also been used already in other crops, for example, in onions and potatoes. And we have an arrangement with originally DuPont, now Corteva, to jointly develop this material. And both organizations are committed to ensuring stewardship of this very good material going forward. But just to give you a quick overview of the label in the UK, essentially there are two sort of crop areas that we're going to have approval on. Lettuce, which is obviously highly relevant to the meeting today, where we have a 0.15 litre per hectare rate, and we are going to be recommending application in combination with Amistar at 0.75 of a litre. And this is the strategy that we have regarding management of the risk of resistance. Because oxythiopiperine is so active and it wouldn't take a lot of changes within organisms to develop resistance, we're always looking to partner it with another material. So the maximum number of applications will be 2 per crop, and the latest time of application for Arondis itself is 7 days. But because you're applying it in combination with Amistar, then you need to take into account that the PHI for Amistar is a little bit longer. So just to look at that in a little bit more detail. So when you add in the Amistar, that will increase your PHI to 14 days. We have a unique position at the moment with Arondis Plus in lettuce crops, whereas in onions, for example, we would be in competition with the Corteva product, Zorvec and Davia. But there are subtle differences between these products, and these are sort of highlighted in this small chart here showing slightly different rates of activity in onions, for example, and different PHIs on account of the other partner products. But within lettuce, at least, it's pretty straightforward. We're the only oxythiopiperine offer available, and we will be selling it in combination, as I said, with the Amistar. Now, in the longer term, we're looking to introduce a pre-formulated mixture, but at least for this year and probably the next couple of years, we're going to be selling a co-pack. So you'll get the litre of Arondis Plus along with 5 litres of Amistar. And again, we are recommending all the time to go with this combined approach to minimise the risks of resistance going forward. And that will help you manage lettuce downy mildew in the longer term, along with all the good things you have in terms of the resistances within the crop. Just going to say a little bit now about some work we did last year with Stockbridge Technology Centre. We had a couple of trials organised last year, but only one at Stockbridge gave us some nice results, which I can present today. We set it up with a butterhead lettuce. It was seeded up in July, as you can see, and then planted out into August. And in order to try to optimize the chances of getting results, they inoculated for Bremier in August, and then again a little bit later in September, because the initial attempt didn't work particularly well. The original program was to have 4 treatments, but in fact we only required 3 treatments during the season because of the crop reached maturity a bit quicker than anticipated. Now, there were a number of different programs that were tested. We tested to start off with what we might regard as a sort of a standard, where we used Amistar with Invader, Infinito, and then some Fubol Gold. And obviously going forward, although Mancozeb has been given an extra period in the UK market just recently by CRD, there must be some question marks about whether or not the full 3-year extension out to 2024 will occur, and how much availability there will be of Mancozeb going forward. So there are going to be a few questions on whether or not people will need to change programs, possibly to take into account non-availability of Mancozeb-based products. So here we've got on treatment 4, 2 doses of Arondis Plus with Amistar, which is the maximum allowed on the label, and interspersed there with Fubal Gold. Just also thought it was worth highlighting the treatments at the bottom here, because this is a Mancozeb sort of free option here, where we've put the Arondis Plus with Amistar in the middle of the program, but started with Previcure, or in this case started with Amistar. So I think we were looking to try and learn a little bit about where best to position this Arondis Plus with Amistar offer, and also to see at the bottom there about the construction of programs for the future which might not contain any Mancozeb-based products. This is just a snapshot of some data here, looking at the incidence of Downy mildew on 2 different occasions, 28th of September and the 5th of October. And you can see here that generally the treatments have worked reasonably well. What I would draw your attention to in these ones in particular is the treatments where we've used Arondis Plus within this program have given some really quite nice results in terms of reducing Bremia. This treatment here, where we've effectively got it in the middle of the program. If I just go back to remind you where that was, so it's in the middle of the program here, that's worked very nicely for us. I took a few photographs on a visit to Stockbridge last year, and you can see here some damage in the untreated crops. And then here we've got a treatment 4 where we got pretty good control at that time with using the Arondis Plus and Amistar. Finally, just a little bit of data looking at marketable heads per plot. Generally, you can see the treatments were improving the proportion of marketable heads that could be harvested in the plots. I'm still waiting to get the final stats on these to see which ones are truly statistically significant. But I think generally speaking, when you went to see the plots visually, you could see that all the treatment programs were having a positive effect on the quality of those lettuce plants. And this just gives you a quick summary of the number of marketable heads per plot. So overall, it's a new product, a new tool for growers to use and to incorporate into programs that they may need in order to maintain season-long control of downy mildew in lettuce crops. And as I say, we will be marketing that this year, and it will always be sold in combination with Amistar as part of our resistance sort of management strategy to try and protect the long-term usability of the material. So that was just a quick look at that. That was all I was planning to say. Thank you very much for your attention, and I think I need to pass to my colleague Max Newbert now.
Thank you, Michael. Yeah, Max, if you could take control.
Yes, thank you very much, Michael and Rebecca, and good morning, everybody. I'm Max Newbert, so with Syngenta, I'm the Technical Manager for Insecticides for the UK and Ireland. As such, I'll go through our insecticide updates for this coming season. So start out with a general regulatory update with things that sort of fall into my remit. The first thing being around lambda cyhalothrin. We've already, obviously, especially for lettuce, had some changes in the last, recent times, but the AI itself is going through re-registration. This is a very long and ongoing process due to the amount of products associated with it active. So this re-registration will have a knock-on effect for any product containing lambda cyhalothrin, not just Hallmark. We expect it to be re-registered. That's not what we're concerned about, but we have been made aware by CRD that the likelihood there will be changes to the label overall due to the re-registration. There'll be a reduction of crops on the label. There'll be a reduction in rates and potentially a reduction of number of applications of the product as well. That's not fully finalised, so we can't really comment too much on exactly what that entails, but that's our outlook. We're going to keep lambda, but there will be some reductions in use overall for the AI, and that will be across labels. The next product is tefluphenone with, in particular, Force ST. Tefluphenone in 2019 went through re-registration, got reapproved. we don't really anticipate anything until around 2024 onwards, where we'll be doing product registrations again. But to elaborate on that point, and obviously relevance to this meeting and the veg sector, is the fact that through the re-registration of the product, we were going to be having a new map number for Force ST, and that led to some issues due to the fact that the emus are based on the old Force map number. Force ST has a label registration for sugar beet and has a max use of active per hectare at 13 grams. So when thinking about what we had as the emus, it became apparent we do face some issues, primarily the dose rate. So the example here is onions, but this can go across all other veg seed, as you might imagine. We have a very different amount of dosing for veg seed and sugar beet seed based on that. So you can see in some cases we're over double the AI amount per hectare, which we need to address. The second issue we face is the fact that Force ST for sugar beet is a pelleted seed rather than film coated. As such, this does form some issues around getting it for the emu use for film coated veg seed. So these are two areas we're addressing this year within Syngenta to try and overcome them, to allow extension of minor use on the new map number. Because previously what had happened, we reverted to the old map number for a short time, which allowed us to distribute and sell the old Force map number into the seed care for allowed treatment of seed up until the end of last year, and that will allow the use of that product to be used all the way up to the end of this year to treat those seeds, allowing treated seed with Force to continue to be sold through this year and into next year, 2022. However, in 2022 there'll be limited seed due to the fact this is last year of application. Force on the seed itself has a shorter half-life due to the fact it volatilizes. We have reduced efficacy after a certain period. So 2021 is really the last year of this current map numbers application to emus. So this is obviously something we are very acutely aware of and addressing going forward with the help of AHTB and CRD. So that's just an update to make people aware, but we are trying to address this. As we know what's happening, we'll let the industry know when we have more information. But moving on to things in the pipeline. So just some insecticide updates from ourselves. We have just got word that we have access now to flunicimid. So this will be sold next year as a Finto, and this will become as a Topeki clone label. So we'll have everything on the Topeki label that's currently there. So this gives obviously another option for growers, and we're obviously another partner to work with on this AI. So that will be potentially of interest to the wider veg industry. The next part is a completely new AI. So this is Peripedion. Some of you might have seen some news articles about this recently, but this is not expected for the UK until, well, on the slide that says 2025 plus, I'd be more likely to say 2027 for UK introduction. This active is very much like spirotetramat, so has those same benefits. So, you know, we've found it so far in our trials to be as good, if not better, efficacy wise, and we've got the same systemicity, and we see it as very safe to beneficials. However, unlike other modes of action, it's not quite as fast acting, so that does need to be taken into account. But this product will be very much targeted at the veg sector, looking at aphids and whiteflies, etc. So that will be something new, and as we do trials in the UK, we'll come back with the data that we gathered for our market. But then moving on to what we currently have, so for the last couple of years we've had Monecto 1 in the market for outdoor lettuce, and as you can see, this is what we have on the label. For lettuce, we've got chewing pest of silver wire and cabbage moth, and our product rate is 0.185 kilograms a hectare over 2 applications with a 7-day harvest interval and a 7 days between applications with a 5-meter buffer zone. But just to dig into that a bit more, so Monecto 1, just as a reminder, is a diamide. So this is a new on-label active for the crop. If you've got some experience of using Coragen as chlorantraniliprole, so that's a first generation diamide, compared to cyantraniliprole, which is in Monecto 1. And the difference here is Mostly around, we have a much wider sort of spectrum of control, as you can see there, mostly Lepidopteras for chlorantraniliprole, but for Monecto-1 we're seeing a lot of, at the moment, which is incidental control of whiteflies, leaf miners and aphids. So it has a much wider control spectrum than it currently has on label, and we're working on that as we do more and more work with Monecto. But to give an idea of what we found with Monecto-1 as incidental control with the active in trials with using it in season, I've tried to put that together in a table to show it compared to maybe some other actives you might be using, such as acetamipride, flunicamide, spirotetramat, etc. And you can just see I've got a list of different pests on the left-hand side. Anything in green in the Monecto-1 column, that just means this is currently incidental control. So this is an on-label, but it's what we see as the efficacy we have when it is a pest in trials when we've targeted the chewing pests. And for the lettuce industry in particular, you can see peach potato aphid there, Myzus persicki, we get very good levels of control. So that might be of relevance. But Monecto-1, although it has a very good and interesting spectrum, isn't a complete aphicide. And there's certain aphids which it has less to no efficacy on. And for yourselves and Nasonovia, and obviously Olaf's already talked about it from the breeding angle, but from the sort of viewpoint of crop protection, you can see I've put an X here indicating instead of Myzus, where we've got excellent control, we get no control with current lettuce aphid Nasonovia. And I've got some data later on to show you. And it's just to show it does have a different efficacy on different aphids. So that would be one not to use it for. However, you know, there are other options in the marketplace which could give control. The other thing, just thinking of other pests in lettuce, so thrips, we do have a label in allium specifically for onion thrips, and we do know we get good control of thrips with Monecto-1. So it does have a very wide and useful spectrum there. And just as a sort of piece along with Monecto-1, there is some usage guidance, because especially with sucking pests in particular, you can, in certain crops, have more or less no efficacy unless it's put with the right adjuvant. And the reason for that is Monecto-1 is a WG formulation of a crop protection product. As such, needs help penetrating specifically waxy crops to allow it to be in the xylem for things like aphids to draw up and ingest it, because that's how it will work on those pests. And it is a xylem mobile product. So you can see here, I've tried to simplify that for the different crops we have labels for. So brassicas is the classic case. I know we're talking about lettuce today, but just to show, just talk about this for a short time, this is absolutely necessary to include a high % methylated rapeseed oil product, so something like phase 2, to get that penetration effect if the AI into the plant. So not only controlling your targets like diamondback moth, but you're controlling Myzus as well. Without it, we see more or less no efficacy. And that will also be the same for leaf-boring pests such as brassica leaf miner. But with carrots, you can see that I've just put a vise. We see uplifts in numerical control and slight increases in marketable yields, but it's not on-off as it is in brassicas. So we do see a benefit, but it's not as massive as brassicas. In lettuce, so far my experience, it has not significantly increased control due to the fact it's obviously a very different crop to the others due to its leafy nature and lack of wax. So we've not so far seen the necessary need to include an adjuvant for lettuce. However, for peas, in hot years where wax might start building, that could be when we would advocate using an adjuvant, and for alliums, just to get that standard practice in there, help it penetrate down into the crown as well for alliums controlling the thrip. So that's just a quick note on inclusion of adjuvants with Monecto-1. But then getting into the sort of control we see with Monecto-1 on its targets in lettuce, you can see this is a culmination of 3 trials of silver wire moth. On the left, that's Coragen or chlorantraniliprole versus Monecto-1 and cyanotraniliprole on the right. So more or less equivalent efficacy in silver wire moth. And then for cabbage moth, you can see more or less equivalent efficacy there as well. So we get very good control of chewing pests. And I think it is the product for controlling chewing pests. But then just a note to say, just a warning on Nasonovia. We did a trial in previous years where we did it with Warwick Crop Centre, and we had the modules inoculated pre-transplanting with Nastanovia. So this was obviously a high pressure scenario, and you can see the percent control of head aphid or Nastanovia into the minus or into the plus. But for Manecta, you can see with and without adjuvant, we have basically no effect, as you might imagine. Acid-tamperin in this trial at the time of recording, the control was the best control measure for Nastanovia. So that's just a bit of information about good use and where you might get that incidental control. So for lettuce, I'd say you're getting it from the mysis, thrip, and obviously all the sort of caterpillar chewing pests is excellent at, with that xylem mobile activity as well. So that was just a quick run through of the regulatory matters coming into effect in the near future, new products on the horizon, and then obviously an update on Manecta 1. So thank you for your attention, and I'll pass back to Rebecca.
Brilliant, thank you very much, Max. So if we have some questions, if people want to pose any questions to any of the panelists or generally, then please type them into the Q&A box. One I've got in already is for Michael. So is it right to class Arondis as a contact protectant?
It is to be used primarily as a protectant rather than a curative material in these crops. Yes, so contact is perhaps not quite right because you have got movement, as it showed in the video, into the leaf surface, but definitely you want to try to get in to use it as a protectant rather than trying to use the material as a curative, which is going to be less effective and increases the risk of, in the long term, developing resistance issues. So yeah, definitely as a sort of protectant is the positioning.
I think it's fair to say with Arondis as well that we've seen it behave very differently in the onions and lettuce than we have in the Zorvec with potato crops, that it's not quite the same.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that, because we've obviously, as I look after potatoes as well, we have had trials where we have included Zorvec, oxythiopiperine in the potato crop, and it is an astonishing product in that crop, whereas I wouldn't describe it in that fashion in what I've seen in onions and lettuce. It's very good, and you need to use it carefully, but it doesn't look quite as amazing as it does in the potato crop.
Thank you, Michael. And one for Max. Actually, I'll probably answer this. With Cruiser being approved on sugar beet for this coming year, do you see Cruiser ever being reintroduced in the future again for lettuce? So we were approached a week or so ago, I think it was, to ask if we would support an application for Cruiser emergency use in lettuce. And unfortunately, Syngenta had to say that we couldn't support that application. And the reasons that we couldn't support that application is the Cruiser 70WS, which is the Cruiser that will go into lettuce. We no longer manufacture. We don't make it for the EME market, so we wouldn't actually be able to supply the product, even if an EA was granted. So at the minute, the answer is no, I'm afraid not. Question on Mancozeb. With Mancozeb still allowed in the UK, are there any plans to manufacture some Fubol Gold or Invader, please? Well, I can answer on the Fubol Gold. Invader isn't our product, I'm afraid, so I can't comment. But Fubol Gold, we are bringing some in this year. We were in discussions with distribution at the back end of last year on the volumes that they require, and because we knew at that point that it would be a 6+6 use-up period, we now know that CRD aren't actually implementing the Mancozeb regulation that the EU are, so it's got a 3-year extension. So yes, there will be Fubol available in the market this season. If anyone else has any other questions they want to type quickly. Otherwise, I will thank the presenters very much for their input. Some very interesting presentations there. We appreciate your time and efforts that went into those. Thank you all for for joining us on the call. As Rosie mentioned earlier, we've got a Brassica and Alliums webinars coming up as well. So if you're interested in those, then please do have a look on our website and sign up for them. So thank you very much. And yeah, we hope to see you face to face very soon. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much,
Thank you,
everybody.
Cheerio.